Please, please. That was all the woman could say while her husband stopped breathing on the kitchen floor. I'm not a doctor, not a nurse. I'm the person behind the wheel, turning on the sirens, weaving through traffic, and getting lives balanced between two thin lines to the hospital as fast as possible. My shift starts at 7 in the evening. The city never really sleeps at night, and neither does illness. Some nights are quiet. Some nights the radio keeps going off so often I don't even have time to take a sip of water. I've transported all kinds of people. A father clutching his chest during a family dinner. A young woman lying unconscious after a traffic accident. A mother about to give birth in the back seat while her husband shook so badly he couldn't fasten his seat belt. Every ride is a story that opens and closes within 15 minutes. My name is Daniel Ortiz. I'm an ambulance driver. Once I was called to a small apartment. A middle-aged man was lying on the kitchen floor. His wife was screaming in a language I didn't understand. Maybe Arabic, maybe Russian. I don't know, but I know grief doesn't need translation. Please, please. That was all she kept saying. Their son, maybe 15 years old, stood against the wall, pale and frozen. He tried to explain his father's name and medical history in broken English, using whatever words he could remember. Inside the ambulance, the paramedic was doing CPR. I drove as fast as I could. Red lights, I crossed them. Cars moved aside when they heard the sirens. I never found out if the man survived. We delivered him to the emergency entrance. The doors closed. And I drove away again. Another call was already waiting. One time I transported a woman suffering from alcohol poisoning. She was barely conscious. Suddenly she sat up and vomited across the ambulance floor while crying and yelling at someone over the phone. I don't need anybody. A few minutes later she broke down again. Please don't leave me. I've heard enough promises, enough curses, enough people saying, if I survive this, I'll change. Not everyone changes. Another night we were returning to the hospital after a false alarm when a woman carrying a little boy stepped in front of the ambulance. The child had a high fever and was convulsing. His mother couldn't speak English. She kept whispering something under her breath. Maybe she was praying. When we lifted the boy onto the stretcher, he opened his eyes and looked at me. His eyes were calm. I've transported hundreds of people. People screaming, people begging, people cursing. But sometimes the calmest person is the child. I remember thinking that if he had enough strength to speak, he probably would have comforted his mother instead. Some ambulance rides are so quiet they become frightening. A motorcycle accident at 2 in the morning. No screaming, no crying, just the steady sound of the heart monitor. And then suddenly, nothing. I'm not allowed to stop the vehicle and think. My job is to keep driving. Some people I bring to the hospital. Some people I carry toward a place nobody wants to name. After every shift, I clean the ambulance floor. Blood, sweat, tears, sometimes amniotic fluid, sometimes the heavy smell of alcohol. I wipe everything away, but the metallic smell of blood sometimes stays in my memory. People ask me if I'm afraid. Of course I am. I'm afraid of heavy rain on slippery roads, afraid of sharp turns when every second matters. Most of all, I'm afraid of the way family members look at me, as if I'm the one deciding whether their loved one lives or dies. But I'm not. I'm only the person driving them toward a chance. Today was another normal shift. Pick someone up, drive. Stop at the emergency entrance while doctors and nurses rush the patient inside. During one brief pause, I thought I recognized someone. A distant relative, maybe. Someone I had only met a few times. For a moment I hesitated, wondering if I was mistaken. Then a siren sounded behind me, urging me to move. I had to keep driving, making space for other people still rushing to save lives. After that, I couldn't think about it for long. Another emergency call came in. Only after my shift ended did I remember that face again. I went to the nurse's station and asked about him. One nurse confirmed it was the same man. She told me what happened. He had suffered a heart attack on an empty street. It took a long time before someone found him and called for help. His condition wasn't good. I stopped by the hospital room and saw his family crying quietly in the hallway. I stood outside the room for a long time, listening as someone inside began crying even harder. But I didn't walk in. When I got home at dawn, I took off my gloves, washed my hands carefully, and showered. My wife always asks, "How was tonight?" I usually answer, "Busy." I never tell her the details, not because I forget them, but because some stories should not be brought into a warm bedroom. I hold my wife tightly for a few minutes before she wakes up and starts her own day. The curtains stay closed. That's when my sleep finally begins. I hope my family never has to ride in my ambulance, and if one day they ever do get hurt somewhere, I hope someone like me will try just as hard to help them. Tonight will be busy again, I whispered into my wife's ear. She laughed softly because it tickled. When are you ever not busy? No, that wasn't what I meant. And I didn't tell her the real reason either. Maybe a little later she would receive a phone call telling her about an unexpected death. When that moment came, she would probably be heartbroken. But for now, I just wanted to hold her a little longer, a little tighter. Once a man came back to find me. A few months after his heart attack, he had recovered. He shook my hand tightly and said, "I'm alive because of your ambulance." I just smiled. I know it wasn't because of me alone, but maybe that night I drove a little faster than usual. And sometimes a little faster is enough. My name is Daniel Ortiz. I don't cure diseases. I don't perform miracles. I just hold the steering wheel tightly, turn on the sirens, and drive through the darkness. Because every time emergency lights flash through an intersection, somewhere ahead, there's a family waiting for hope to arrive